Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Sit Down. I'm Reverend Phil Dieke, one of the pastors on staff here at White Rock United Methodist Church. Hey, we're in week 2 of our Prologue as we're entering into this year-long series called Unfold, where we're going to spend an entire year looking at the power of story and the unfolding of story. Our series is called Unfold. If you haven't tuned into this yet, know that you can go to wrumc.com and get all of the information, all the resources we have on Unfold and the different things that we've written, the things that we're suggesting to go read and watch, and all these different kind of opportunities to get to be a part of this unfolding story. And one of the things we're doing here to sit down for these first couple weeks in the prologue is talking about the power of story. And so I'm really excited today to have a guest on who I know because I had the privilege of officiating her wedding a couple years ago. And she's actually a local Dallas author, and she writes, her stories are here in Dallas. When she writes, she's a fiction author, but she writes about Dallas. So Kristi, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So as Phil mentioned, my name is Kristi. I've been here in Dallas for about 15 years. I work in commercial real estate, so writing is definitely a hobby. But I love it, and I appreciate you guys just including me to be a part of this.
At what point in life did you say, I want to be a writer?
I think it's been about 5 years that I seriously said I wanted to be a writer. It was actually right before I met you. I was planning my wedding and was getting pretty stressed out and needed an outlet for that, and said to my fiance at the time, I think I want to write a book. And instead of laughing at me, he thoroughly encouraged it. And so I sat down and I wrote the first 2 within like the 2 months before our wedding. It came out really fast.
Really?
I wrote all the time, and it kept me calm, and I loved it.
So I have one of them here. Letters from the dead. This was the first one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just when I asked Kristi to do this, she was like, I don't know if these are like church appropriate books.
They're not.
It's fine. It's all good. Like it's totally fine. Because sometimes fiction you need to escape from even your religiosity. So no, so that's awesome. First of all, I love that Jeff was like, yeah, full on, you should do this. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. But what did you study growing up? Or like, were you kind of a big writer growing up or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed writing in school. My high school was real big into writing. We had to crank out 20 to 30 page papers all the time. I didn't always love the prompts that we were given, but I think I just got good at cranking them out. And then in college, I got to do some more creative writing classes, and I loved that. But it mostly stems from I've always liked to read. I prefer reading to watching TV. I like getting lost in a book, and TV kind of stresses me out. I don't know. I think I do better when I can imagine the scene versus actually seeing it. And writing just felt like a natural transition from reading. So, have you always had a pretty active imagination? I think so. Yeah.
So when you knew you wanted to write a book, you knew immediately it was going to be a fiction book because you already had these kind of ideas in your head?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so again, we're talking about the power of story. So when you think of story, like what do you think makes for a good story?
Oh, I feel like I'm going to copy the answer from Gabrielle last week.
From last week?
Yeah. Which we talked about earlier, but it's definitely characters. She is obviously writing nonfiction and real-time events, and in fiction I can make stuff up and it's fine. But all of my characters are loosely based on the likeness of my family. And it's easy to write what you know, and it's all with their permission.
Okay.
No, I don't have anyone in my family who's been murdered or had, a terrible affair or some of the things that are written about. So very loose.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So loosely based on my family.
Okay.
But it's kind of fun, whenever we face a challenge, I can twist the challenge a little bit, put it in somebody's backstory, and then watch that character overcome it. And that's where sort of the therapy play is for me. Sometimes it's something I'm going through or something my family's going through. And so you get to watch these characters grow, and then we in turn, climb out of the hole that we're in the first place. And so it's fun. But yeah, definitely characters.
Well, and so I was talking to some friends the other day, and they were saying that they were comparing reading this book, and then both of them were like, yeah, I didn't really love the book. I just felt like the characters weren't developed well enough, and it just really felt flat.
Yeah.
So when thinking about a book, do you typically start with the characters and then kind of build a plot around it, or do you have this like plot in your head that it has to come out, and so you design the characters?
It's a combination of both. So I'm writing a murder mystery series, so I have a lot of the same characters in every single book, and then obviously there's new victims and new bad guys and new, tertiary, third-party characters that come into play. So the core characters are constant, and you watch them grow obviously the most. And so sometimes I'll know in advance what hurdle I want them to overcome in the book. And sometimes as I'm writing, new ideas pop in and it totally changes. Usually with each, so I've published 2 and I have 2 more that I'm working on that are mostly written. I'm just making them better. Most of the time I have most of the plot in my head, but I have changed the ending a couple of times. I won't like the way that it actually wraps up, and so I'll like delete 50 pages and start over, which is
that gives me anxiety. That gives me so much anxiety deleting 50 pages. I can't wrap my mind around that.
It's a lot.
So you said you love to read books more than you love to watch TV. Is that typically where you get other inspiration from, is the reading of other books? Yeah. There will be, certain lines or passages that I just fall in love with, and it inspires me to try to write something differently. I write, so all of my books are the type where every chapter is from a different person's point of view. And so sometimes when you read a passage, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I can see Ava's character feeling that emotion. And so I'll, try to find a way for her to express it a little better. I should also say, I'm a very beginner writer. So I have a lot of growth and a lot of work to be done, but I think it's really fun. And if you enjoy the book, then I helped to do one good thing today. Totally. So this is not the same at all. But I feel like when I'm writing a sermon, which I don't do a ton, I'm not like a big sermon, like Mitchell, our senior pastor, does most of our preaching, but like when I write a sermon, I feel like everything I'm experiencing in the world, I end up finding like, oh, that could fit in the sermon, or like, oh, that could fit here in the sermon, or like that, so everything becomes consumed in my writing of that, which, these are like 2,000 word, 2,400 word, sermons, as opposed to, I don't know how many thousands of words you're writing for a book or whatever, but it's so interesting how, like, even in writing a sermon, I become consumed and my whole world becomes consumed. Do you feel like sometimes you get totally lost in your stories, especially because they're loosely related on your family?
Yes, definitely. It's easy to get lost in it and then need to have a hard time climbing out, but realizing that you have to, because there's other things you have to do.
It's this whole idea of like, this is what I love to do, and here's real life as well.
Yeah, here's my job that actually makes me money, and here's my hobby that pretty drastically drains money from me, but it's okay.
Hey, we all have expensive hobbies, So this is just the hobby that you have. Is that what you hope, though? Like, if best case scenario, do you end up just writing books for a living?
Oh my gosh, yeah. If I could quit my day job and just write books all the time, I would do it in a heartbeat. If my boss is out there watching this, I also love it.
I was like, if you're, don't tell anybody if you guys know who she works for. So,
no, I do. I have an awesome job, but it's, it's a job, and writing isn't. So I'm allowed to make it more fun.
Do you ever worry that if it was your job, though, would it lose some of the appeal?
Probably. I'm sure it would.
Yeah, that's scary, right?
Because if it is your job, then you've got a publisher and you have deadlines, and it's all the stresses that any other job has. There's no stress-free job. Or if you found it, holler at me.
Let me know. You can find me on Amazon at my Amazon author page. Okay, so let's stick with the inspiration thing a little bit. So I asked Gabrielle this last week too. But are there characters, like if you were a character, like who are the characters that inspired you, or if you were your own character, who would you associate yourself with?
So I can either answer that in a really easy way or a really complicated way. So
Both.
As I mentioned earlier, I lease office space for a living. My 2 main characters lease office space for a living. So it's very much writing what I'm familiar with. Now, it's not a boring real estate book. That's very much on the back burner. Shockingly, they're able to go around solving crimes and doing very little leases. That's okay. So the main character is a slightly older, better version of myself, like who I hope I grow up to be. And then people keep telling me that I'm grown up. They're like, you're married and you're a mom. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I guess I am grown up.
Doesn't count.
I'm still a child at heart.
There you go. That's good.
But so I've definitely tried to craft her as just a better version, cooler version of myself. If I could be any character, I'd want to be Hermione Granger. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan.
Okay.
That really got me into reading when I was younger. I think, I don't know. She's my favorite character.
Is that your favorite book series, or like kind of some of the other things that brought you inspiration?
Yeah.
Harry Potter?
So I have reread the Harry Potter books like thousands of times. Literally thousands of times. But
as soon as you said it, I was like, she's not exaggerating.
No, yeah, literally not. Like I just reread the 4th one over Christmas because I was like, let's just see what they're doing. But my murder mystery series was, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert B. Parker. He's deceased now, but he had a bunch of different murder mystery series, and the Spencer series was my go-to. It's quick reads. I mean, some of the chapters are 1 to 2 pages. You can sneak in just a little reading before bed, and they're funny. You know, some likable, some not likable characters. They're fantastic.
Okay. So you said these first 2 books you just like knocked out in like a couple of months.
Yeah.
Do you have like a discipline, or like I think Gabrielle last week talked about, she wakes up every day and writes 3 pages no matter what, you know, kind of thing. Are there things that you do to help kind of flex your creativity or keep you in with this inspiration idea of writing?
So I used to be a lot better about it. Yeah, she said she wrote 3 pages every single morning and never reread it.
Yeah.
I was like, how do you not go back and see what you wrote? I would be so curious. So props to her for sure.
Right.
No, before. This sounds terrible because I only have 1 child, and I mean, you have like 3, and a lot of people have a bunch.
It feels like 30, but yes, I have 3.
I have 1, which keeps me very busy. So I definitely have a harder time being consistent with my writing. I mean, sometimes I'll go several months without writing anything. Before I had a baby, I had a lot more time, and so I would write, you know, every day, at nights, weekends, like whenever. I'd just sit next to Jeff on the couch and he'd be watching football and I'd be writing a book. And it was just, I had so much more time. So I'm trying to figure out how to create that time again. But I now work a little farther away from where I live, so my commute's a little bit longer. And then, you know, I try to spend every waking moment with my son, and then I'm tired.
Does he inspire you in any kind of different ways? Like having a kid, does that inspire you or has it changed your writing at all?
Not really. I contemplated throwing a kid into the story just because I have new experiences now that I could write about. But Ava's character is not there yet, and that would really be who would have the child. So it wouldn't make any sense for her to have a baby. So no.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I often have to do children's time right now, so if you ever want to come speak to our children and tell them stories, I would love for you to, because I'm always like scratching my head trying to figure out how to convey like theological concepts to children, and I'm convinced that children's ministers are the most creative people in the world.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's the same for teachers, right? Like people who deal with children all the time and teach really complicated things to children are just brilliant.
And you have a lot of patience, I feel like, with that job. I don't have a lot of patience.
I find myself lacking patience quite often lately. I'm just going to blame the pandemic. I think that's fair.
Oh, right? Yeah. You can blame everything on COVID these days. Right?
it's there for anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so so you said you're working on 2 books. What's next after those 2 books? Are you going to keep with this murder mystery series? Is it going to be the same one, or you think at some point you'll take a big turn and go a different direction?
So I think probably always crime. I just think, I don't know, that's kind of a sick-minded thing to say, but I find it really interesting.
Well, you're in good company, right? Because I think in podcasting, it's all these murder mysteries that are like topping the charts of podcasting. Totally. So I think you're in good. You're in a good area.
So I'm originally from Hawaii, and so I sort of want to send my cast here to Hawaii somehow. I haven't figured out how to get all of them there, but send them to Hawaii and then encounter a crime, and then have like a spin-off series with a Hawaiian, detective and Hawaiian locals, so that I could have sort of a Dallas branch and then a Hawaii branch with different people. So my main character her name is Ava, which is my niece. And now I have a son, and my sister has another daughter. And so I feel like one day they'll grow up and wonder why they weren't included. So I think they could be my Hawaii storyline.
Your throw-off stories.
Yes,
Yeah.
I haven't written any of those yet, but that's sort of what I've been thinking.
That's fascinating. I love that idea. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities to write good crime things in Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, so I can just imagine like it being quite tropical. I also watched White Lotus last year. You said you didn't watch much TV.
Yeah, I heard that was creepy.
It's somewhat painful to watch. So, but it looked so beautiful. The cinematography was so lovely. So
I think it'll be fun.
One day.
I don't know. We'll see. But my dad also, so he is one of my editors. So he's very involved in the whole process. And he has voiced, hey, maybe it would be fun to co-author a book. And he was born and raised in Hawaii, too. So I think it could be kind of cool for us to write that one together. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, as we kind of wrap up here, what would you tell people about storytelling if you were trying to inspire somebody else to become a good storyteller?
Oh, gosh. I feel like, how do I inspire somebody? I'm just so passionate about it. I think that if you have the slightest passion about writing or reading or telling stories, just nurture that and practice it. And don't be shy or embarrassed. Like, I was pretty embarrassed to tell my family, hey, I want to write a book, thinking they'd laugh at me, but they didn't at all. And I think you'd be surprised, your friends and your family usually want to encourage you to follow your passions. So if you feel it, go get it.
I feel like I saw a quote the other day. I was looking up just kind of story quotes, just looking again for inspiration, and something like, the worst story is the story not told, or something like that.
Sure.
And I thought, oh, that's really good. I love that idea. Okay, so if people want to find your books, you're on Amazon, right?
Yes, Amazon.
Local bookstores too. Can find you in Dallas?
I know it's at Half Price Books on Northwest Highway, so you can go get it there.
The flagship store.
There were a couple at the SMU bookstore, because that's where I went to school, but I don't think they're still there.
Okay, so this has your maiden name on it, though. So is that all your books under your maiden name, or is
they
it?
are. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce
Kristi
it.
Torkildson. It's really hard to spell.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
And the second one is called Poisoned.
Poisoned. So Letters from the Dead or Poisoned.
If you're under 18, don't go buy it. And I'm sorry.
Love that. Rated R. You don't need to apologize. You're totally fine. There's different genres for a reason. All of our kids who are tuning in now, you have something to look forward to in a few years, right? Like you can write your own stories that are age appropriate.
There you go.
No, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing your gifts and your passion for storytelling. I found it on my nightstand. I knew I bought this years ago whenever you first published it, and I haven't ever gotten around to reading it. So I'm committing to it now. I want to read it, and I want to figure out what Ava gets into.
Yeah, she gets into all kinds of stuff.
I love it. I love that. So thanks for taking us on this story journey. We look forward to more things being published from you and more stories to come.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll be back for worship in just a couple of minutes. We'll see you shortly.